Good afternoon. We have Timothy Geach with us. We are going to close this series with the Golden Key. And Tim was my colleague at UCL. He was studying xenopus at Professor Lesdale Lab in Department of Anatomy. That's where we met. He's like Robbie Williams of science.
Thank you very much. I'm very flattered.
But you look like him. Him now, he has a very important position as a senior publisher at Nature. So you could talk about a little bit. When I went to visit Maza and Steve, that were my supervisors, you were doing a postdoc there at UCL. So tell me about your after the PhD. What did you do? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you said, after my PhD, which was in xenopus development, I went and carried on doing a postdoc. I was postdocing for maybe 6-7 years. And I went to the National Institute for Medical Research after I finished my PhD at UCL. I was there for 4 years.
Talking about Mill Hill?
In Mill Hill, yes.
Oh, yeah. Before they closed it.
Before they closed it, yeah. I went there and they closed it. And then I was looking to start my own lab, and I was writing lots of grants, and I ran out of postdoc money, and thankfully Steve was kind enough to take me on, so I worked very closely with Tom Hawkins for a year, 18 months, while I was trying to so I used that opportunity to learn some zebrafish techniques. I was writing grants, and I was all sort of set. I had I didn't get money to start my own lab, and I was writing other postdoc grants at the time, and I was all set to go to do a postdoc in New York, and then the funding didn't work out. So I decided, well, I've had a really good run at this. I've got a number of papers, but let's just say
they have very nice publications. You have a list. I was checking the list, and it's like you published a lot.
I published a lot, but I think at the time it was really hard to get funding. And I looked at my friends, my colleagues who were getting funding, and I looked at the papers that were on their CVs and compared them to mine, and yeah, I had the volume, but they weren't necessarily in the sort of right journals, if you like. So, I had to face it. I'd got a bit too old. I was quite a long way into my postdoc career. So I decided to kind of cut my losses and change direction, but not too much. And I started applying for jobs as an editor at various scientific publications, and I eventually came to be a reviews editor at Nature. So working on the Nature Reviews titles. So I would commission reviews from leading scientists, and I worked on sort of many different titles. I ended up kind of specializing in cardiology and endocrinology, which was hilarious because I had no background in that whatsoever. But you go to lots of scientific conferences, lots of medical, hardcore clinical conferences, and you use all your skills that you've built up as a postdoc to learn new topics.
So, I don't know if you bring a ball object with you or a paper. Everybody know Nature, so
well, working from home, I don't have anything with me, and
now everything is digital. So
yeah, exactly. and interestingly, I think this period now that we're in is the first time in history that all of the Nature journals have been produced completely remotely. which is pretty amazing, you know,
I've
that we
been
can do
working
that.
since my PhD. When I was writing my thesis, I was working, because everything is digital. I say a lot in computer. I read a lot. It's kind of, you don't stop. It's like when you are doing your thesis, you drink and you eat and you go to the computer and you just don't stop. It's like
Yeah. Yeah,
so.
well, I have to stop to do some childcare every now and then.
So
Yeah, and then after I was an editor for like 4 years, I then moved into what my current role is, which is a publishing manager. And you know, this role is a kind of varied. I don't deal with any content anymore, but I sit in between the commercial teams who go about selling the journals, selling subscriptions to the journals, and the editorial teams, and kind of make sure that, you know, the editorial needs of the journals are represented to the commercial teams, and the commercial teams, the needs of the commercial teams are represented to the editorial teams. And
it's a very nice bridge between.
Yeah. But I do lots of things like strategy and developing proposals for new journals. So this year we launched Nature Cancer, which I wrote the publishing proposal for.
I wrote a chapter in Nature Cancer about wind signaling.
Okay.
I had a chapter of the book of Nature Cancer this year, published this year.
So I do lots of things like that, and then ensure that these new journals are launched on time. And there are myriad number of things that you have to make sure that, you know, get in place for a journal to launch. And, you know, starting a journal from scratch, where, you know, you have to open up, you know, you have to go out and canvas for people to submit to journals. Let's face it, with nature in front of the name, it helps.
Very, very. I was like, when I was doing it, I need to do this. This is nature. If I have a nature in my CV.
It's very, it's prestigious. We can't get away from that fact, even though, you know, we treat all authors equally, but yeah, it's a big thing to get into nature.
So one of the things so as your opinion, you went. This is not so fun, but it's important to say. So you feel like you have a lot of what is bad, to have a lot of papers published in journals which are not high impact factor, or have a nature, a science. Because I was talking with other scientists that have science and nature, and now are grant advisors, and there were. There's no magic formula. Sure, you have a nature and a science, and I think 20 years ago it might be you are a PI, but nowadays it's not like that, isn't it?
No, I agree. I think if you're doing research and you've got a project that is going to yield a really high impact paper, you just keep going with that high impact paper. I think, you know, the science is funny. I think it's often quite a bit about luck. And sometimes you end up on a project which is going to yield a really like interesting result. And there are some research projects that, you know, are not in that league. And that's not to say that they're not important and that you're not doing important work, but you know, are they groundbreaking enough to warrant those high impact papers? And you don't know. And in that case, it's most important to publish. If you don't publish, you perish, to use an old phrase. But if you have the opportunity to push through a project and get it into a really high impact paper, I would certainly sacrifice lots of small papers for one big story.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking not just because I publish at Nature lots of really big papers, but I'm from the experience of having to look through my CV after 6 years of postdocing and say, okay, I've got like 12, 13 research papers, but they are, I think the best journal I got into was sort of Development, or Journal of Biological Chemistry, and they're both good journals, but not to kind of, I didn't think at the time, and again, this is quite a few years ago now, I didn't think at the time they were kind of getting me through the door of the grant application process to kind of.
So one other question is, like, you were in very critical moments. What was your driving force? If you are saying you were writing grants, writing your PhD, it's tough to be a scientist. We're not.
Yeah.
So what is your driving force? What do you think you are, a fighter, or what?
I would say so. Yeah, I think there's you've got to have quite a sort of tenacious spirit to be a scientist. I think you've got to have a tenacious spirit for pretty much everything these days. Yeah. But
with COVID,
so nothing is quick in science. So you've just got to keep plugging away, and you've kind of got to keep that dream alive. It had been my sort of dream ever since maybe I was 16 to have my own lab and to be publishing papers and doing research, and I wanted desperately to kind of go down that path. So it was quite a wrench when I realized that actually I don't, I'm not going to make it, if you like. In some ways, it's a little bit like being an elite sports person. You train and train and train and train and train, and you're in the reserve side, let's say, of a top football team, but you're not making it through, so you have to kind of take a different path.
But that I applied to Nature, but I didn't get it. Yeah, I applied to Nature, and I was like, I want to think that everything is gonna be open access to everybody. You can click on, and now is happening that click. And I said on my interview, you click one site, you see the structure of the protein. You click another site, you see clinical results. You click in, and I was dreaming about this. I was a bit ahead of time. I think they think I was like, oh my God, this girl eats too much. but I was.
You're right. It's happening now, and like
But this was in 2004, and now we are 2020. I was a little bit ahead of my time.
You're a visionary.
So mentors. Do you have mentors? People, you told us about Tom, Steve.
Yeah, I think I always maintained a really, really good relationship with my PhD supervisor, Les. I still meet up with him for drinks every now and again. There was another PI that I got to meet this guy in the pub, in the Jeremy Bentham.
I miss it so much.
And we developed Les and Sandip and I and Sandip's postdoc Dev developed a long-term collaboration, which is still going between Les and Sandip. And so I count Les and Sandip as sort of my real sort of scientific mentors, if you like. I think in working at Nature, there are people there as well who are sort of mentors. And I think I was thinking about how what sort of defines people as mentors, and I always think of I always sort of gravitate to people who I think I can learn something from that person. You know, there's like quite often you know, they'll be sort of saying something and you're like, wow, I didn't think of that in a million years. You know, there's no way I could have, you know, come up with that. And at that point, I always think I need to learn something from that person. So, you know, that's how I sort of, you know, that's how I always kind of, you know, felt with Les and Sandeb and one or two people that I work with now. It's, yeah, so...
So networking is fundamental. People think that only in business or banking or investment banking you do networking. Networking in science is crucial and vital.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But people need to have hobbies. To be productive, we need to rest. You have one great hobby, which is photography. It's like taking photos.
Yeah. I haven't. Yeah, I sort of dip in and out of that. With two young children, I find it hard to keep that up at the moment. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, yeah, I do a lot of photography. I actually do like a lot of exercise as well. Maybe that's why, you know, you were saying like I've probably lost weight since like years ago. So I do a lot of running now and a lot of working out in the gym. But
actually, do you have a funny story injecting embryos or stuff like that? One story. I have millions of stories with
I don't know whether maybe not injecting embryos, but there is this is funny now, but at the time it wasn't so funny. So I would get very passionate about my experiments, and if things didn't work, I'd get very upset. And I think something had not worked for maybe 3 weeks, and let's just say there is a large dent in the front of one of Les's fridges, which is still there today. And well, no, it was one of those plastic tube racks, and I might have thrown it rather forcefully across the room, and it sort of exploded. And then I sort of walked out of the room like in disgust, and a whole bunch of other people went and cleared it up quietly.
You remember Will Norton? Will?
Yes, yeah, I know Will. Yeah.
Will, once I discovered him crying under the bench, saying, "My experiments are not working." You stop, Will. You are behaving like a kid. You are.
Yeah.
I'm fed up of this. Or when he was my flatmate as well. So I arrived home and he was drinking whiskey and reading a paper. And then, Will, what are you doing? You should go to the pub, not reading a paper and drinking whiskey. And like so many funny stories that we had. And it was really a golden time for doing science at UCL. It was really crucial.
Yeah, and there's still that part of me on Les's freezer there, fridge freezer. I should go and sign the work.
So I don't know. I don't know what you see if you're going to be in nature. What you see yourself doing in 5 years from now, in being director of UK.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, I think right now I am at like that sort of crossroads. I've been working in publishing now for nearly 8 years. I've been in my current role for 2 or 3. I think, you know, I don't think I'm going to go back to being an editor. You know, being an editor is fun. You know, you get to go to all of the great scientific conferences, and you get to...
But now everything is online.
Everything's online, exactly. But back in the day, meaning like 6 months ago, you know, I would go to maybe 4 or 5 conferences a year, and the great thing is you get to speak to all of the top people and get to hear like all the new research. That was great. But, you know, I don't think I'm going to go back to being an editor. I think I'll probably stay on this sort of publishing, this publishing bandwagon, this publishing pathway, a career pathway. Yeah, you know, just
I ask you, Portuguese always asks things, and
Mhm.
I have these interviews are all I don't know if I could send, they are in a digital format. I have all these videos. Maybe I
Mhm.
could publish it or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they are funny stories, and at the same time, I'm starting a new project in
Mhm.
September. So this is are just like on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
This series is going to end now this summertime, and
Mhm.
I'm planning to do a series about women scientists and about contribution of science, technology, engineering, in maths,
Mhm.
um, and about pioneers and their profile, and especially women. And especially my first episode, I'm working on it. It's going to be about. There's a lot of stuff, but
Mhm.
there's a movie now that is going to be released. I don't know if you know about Marie Curie, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I have already a very well known, not so young as us, but a well known Portuguese physic. And he's going to comment about Marie Curie and
Mhm.
all these achievements that she made and about experiments. But I want to give her a, a human profile about she suffered a lot, and she went from Poland to Paris, and she starved. And so I want to give this feeling. So if nature is interested in something, I am available to collaborate and everything. This is the Portuguese of way in doing things. but
Well, I
but
know lots of people in nature, so if you send me an email, I can and a proposal, I can put you in touch with the appropriate people. I have no influence over content anymore.
yeah. So yeah, you are more in business like nowadays. But
Yeah, I would say so.
yeah, so I'm still very connected with content, and yeah, I
Mhm.
wrote a chapter in cancer this year, so I'm still very connected to science
Mhm.
and content. And so now the $1 million question: what are you doing personally and in terms of job when you realize this going to be this virus is going to be a pandemic and is going to revolution be a change, a very big change in the way we are living, and it's going to be an atomic bomb. It's
Yeah.
when
Um,
you realize that, and when you, in Portuguese we say it caiu a ficha. It's a Brazilian thing. Is you realize, and the key enter the lock, and you
oh,
realize that you
the
open the
British
Pandora
the
box.
British phrase is the British phrase is when the penny dropped.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we like at work. Obviously, we were sort of aware of scientifically what was going on pretty early on. Um, I think so. So do you mean sort of what
You were I
like
was
how I changed sort of professionally or personally or?
I can't explain what I was planning a very big outreach event in the
Mhm.
area where I live. I had connections with the local parish, and I was doing very busy, going to meetings and
Mhm.
everything. And I email and this was the pandemics, and I email he was not my teacher, he was a teacher about epidemiology in my university. I emailed him and saying, oh, he must be very busy. One of the guys that invite me to do the nature book, And he sent me an email. I said it's going to take a while because he's too busy and he's a professor. And he emailed me instantly saying, Felipa, and it said, when this thing passes over to, we are done with this, could you be a speaker in my event, in my outreach event? And he said, this thing is not going through. We are going to live with this a very long time. And I realized, oh my God. Or oh my.
Yeah.
And he replied to me because he's a very big professor. I said he's not gonna reply. He said, "No, I'm helping the government. I don't have time to do outreach events." But
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. I don't think there was necessarily one sort of big moment. I keep going through little waves where I sort of. I think about what has happened over the past 4 months, and kind of just go, wow, this is going to fundamentally change our entire lives. And even if we go back to some sort of level of our previous life, this will always, what has happened over this past 4 months will, and probably longer, will always probably come to define the rest of our lives, I think. I don't think there was one point. I remember the moment when the UK went into lockdown and the Prime Minister came onto television, and I just went, wow, okay, this is genuinely pretty big here. I think, I was still sort of, it's quite good having a scientific background, because you can sort of process, and I think initially I was probably less concerned than I am now. When I read, I was reading the initial reports that came out of Wuhan, and it didn't seem so bad. But it's clear that there are massive geographical and demographic differences in death rate, in morbidity, in hospitalization, and it's just seemingly so unpredictable. Whereas 4 months ago it was this is a virus, it has these symptoms, and this is the stratification of the various this many people die, this many people get hospitalized, this many people survive after hospitalization. It seemed fairly clear cut. Now I just don't know, where it lands. And I think the unintended consequences, or not unintended, the unknown consequences are, what has happened to a lot of people who would have ordinarily been diagnosed with cancer during during this period, who have avoided going to hospital because they felt like
there are millions of people with cancer now.
Yeah, there will be scientific studies done for probably centuries to come. I can see in a century's time there are going to be this multitude of epigenetic analyses of what has happened. Just as the same that we have epigenetic studies of that link back to famines 100 years ago.
Exactly.
I think this is.
So this is not a way of putting my things in nature. I invite you and your family to come to Portugal, because there's a bridge. To go to Algarve, because I have a house in south of Portugal.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
There's a problem with we are not in the list of countries. But when everything is more calm down, you are invited to come to my summer house and enjoy Algarve. Will was there. I was inviting Nina loads of times to come and everything. So so people from Marika, remember Marika? Was a Greek person doing in Steve's lab, a Greek girl. So she was here as
Oh,
well.
I can't remember.
So I invited a lot of people. So you are invited.
Lovely, thank you very much. Yeah.
And so I want to people to the message from this all series of interviews is to wear masks, to keep social distance. We don't have a lot. We don't have a lot of magic. A magic pill to save this, because people are asking, oh, give me this, give me that, and give me. We don't have it yet. I hope there are a lot of pharmaceutical companies working on that, and they are different stages, because usually when you have a vaccine you have animal testing, and they are skipping stages and testing already in humans. Which is a little bit dangerous. So, but keep the social distance, wear masks, be safe, put alcohol gel on your hands, do all of this. And I ask you, and I want to thank you, Tim. You were great, giving time of your family, giving your time from nature. It's
no problem.
important to this project. So thank you very, very much, and have a nice. Try to relax. Do you have a garden?
Right now I'm staying at my mother-in-law's house in the country, so we've got a big garden here.
You
and
don't
there
have
are
to see, because for me, it's the seas like it.
Oh yeah. No, we've got some nice hills out in the background where I go running for a while. But
okay,
yeah,
great.
As soon as we could, we escaped London. We were there for 3 months, but then we needed a break for that. So
yeah, for sure. Thank